Breakthrough marketing technology is known for go-to-market plans that grow revenue 3 to 10% and reduce launch times by 20%. Sweep is how we do it. We work to take you from being a transaction limiter to a transaction enabler. Sweep is the breakthrough signature 9-step process, the roadmap to complete the workflow that aggregates the sequential tasks or milestones on the road to your success. We advance you from the point where you document your current state through the design phase, then on to the completion or the deployment, the launch of your tested offering. We start by making sure that the work you do today, your process, is documented appropriately. Once we've organized all the right activities from being uncorroborated to being documented, we'll take the time to drive the right type of design. When the design is in place, then we focus on a deployment that works best for you and your team. But keep in mind, in order to get to the point where you actually move from being a transaction limiter to a transaction enabler, we need to go through each one of the sweep steps. And we need to do it by starting with your current state of what is undefined. In some cases, clients have said that they already have something defined. That's okay too, but we need to confirm the scope of the existing activities is correct, because what we found is that too often it's too broad or too narrow, or just not really the right scope for the process. The boundaries that are necessary to keep the development, design, and implementation workflow flowing are not in place. The client is not yet ready for business process automation that could be as powerful as an RPA solution, a robotic process automation solution with artificial intelligence engineered in, if in fact that's what is right for their organization. So we say that we start with an undefined process, which we scope to establish the right boundaries, and in that order. From there, we take time to brainstorm with you and your team in order to identify the various process steps that are right for you, right for your process, right for your workflow. And once we have the process steps defined, we're able to identify the key outputs and appropriate inputs that go into that process. When we have all of that, we move forward to the next step. What we have now unearthed is a lot of activity that your organization does. Yes, it's organized, but it's really fragmented. It's really just pieces. We need to take those pieces, to take those fragments and put them into a visualization that allows us to really confirm that the tasks we've included have the right types of approvals, control points, flow, and measurements, that we have the right type of metrics in place before we can even begin to design a future state that will deliver the business performance your strategy demands. Once we have done that, we've been moved from uncorroborated to documented. And now it's time for us to move forward. In order to build a workflow solution that is efficient and repeatable, we need to digest it, to break it into pieces, to simplify it. We're taking something that's a large dump of activities, though well documented, but still at the stage of being burdensome. We need to streamline it. We need to make sure that the workflow is streamlined for the process to work properly. Now that we've transformed the complexity, we have a simplification. We can continue to sweep to duplication. We remove duplication in this process at this stage when we remove the waste. We get rid of it. We get rid of what's redundant. all of those different things, the defects, the additional things that have been processed that don't need to be processed, that your organization has done out of habit. We boil the work down to its key components. Once we remove the waste, we take the time to move to the next step of taking what is left and unarranged and putting it into a logical order that allows us to really build out what is a proper flow. Only then can an RPA solution be adopted. That completes the design, and now we're actually ready to move on to begin deployment. In order to begin deploying something, though, we know that essentially we're starting with something that's untested. Untested in the real production environment or parallel production environment, where we actually want to build a prototype. When we do the prototype, we now have an offering that is reviewable, that we can pinpoint for tweaking to match our business capabilities, as well as the market need. Working with other clients, we've noticed that it has been critical to do this tweaking, to make these changes at this point, to identify them, to do this review before commercialization. And when we do it, we determine the variables. Those variables that can be scaled in different ways, shapes, or forms so that the workflow can be expanded or done this way or that, or linked to something else or some other process or workflow. That allows us to be able to configure it. We can configure the users, we can configure the transactions, we can do all of those things at this stage. Now that we have scaled, we can actually go in and do a setup. Once we have a full setup, we can implement the process workflow. We can execute it in a production environment. At that stage, we can begin monitoring it to make sure that it's delivering as expected according to customer requirements. To deploy, we have progressed from being unvalidated in the market or production environment to being confirmed. We have confirmed that our workflow delivers the intended output. By the end of sweep, we've taken something that was unvalidated and confirmed that it meets your business needs. At this point, you are now a transaction enabler.